I'm Keanu Smith, and this is Clutch Sports. Week 14 of college football was a battle to the finish. With the top college football teams in the country fighting to the finish, there were victorious football teams and crushed spirits. So let's get into it. The first game that shook up college football this weekend was Oregon and the Washington Huskies. Coming into this game, I expected Bo Nix to lead the Ducks to victory. However, Washington QB MPJ did his thing, absolutely obliterating the Oregon Pac-12 defense. The Huskies ended up winning 34-31. What a tragedy. Bo Nix completed 21 of his 34 passes for 239 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He did not back down without a fight. Bo Nix was also the leading rusher for the Ducks, rushing for 69 yards on 6 carries. Tez Johnson was the only receiver to help him out, catching 5 receptions for 68 yards. The Huskies, on the other hand, looked unstoppable. Michael Penix Jr. threw 39 attempts and completed 27 of them for 319 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. No wonder both of these QBs are in the Heisman run. Dylan Johnson was bulldozing his way through tackles, carrying the ball 28 times for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns. The 2 wide receivers that showed out for the Huskies put on a show. Jalen McMillan caught 9 receptions for 131 yards, and Rome Odunze caught 8 receptions for 102 yards. As the game wound down, Oregon's defense could not stop Washington. However, by my analysis, I do believe Oregon's offense cost them this game. Moving on to Texas and Oklahoma State. What a catastrophe for OSU. Texas devoured them 49-21, which is mind-blowing. Coming into this game, I expected Texas to win this game by far, and that's what they came to do. For Oklahoma State, Allen Bowman threw for 250 yards on 22 for 36 passing attempts for 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. Ollie Gordon was terrible rushing for 24 yards on 13 carries. Brennan Presley caught 9 receptions for 93 yards and 1 touchdown. By no means did Oklahoma State play horrible. However, they could not hang with Big Texas. Moving on to Texas, Quinn Ewers completed 35 of his 46 passes, which is insane. He also had 4 touchdowns on the day and 1 interception. Keelan Robinson had 4 carries for 75 yards. The wide receivers for Texas were dominant in this game. Adonai Mitchell had 6 receptions for 109 yards with 1 touchdown. Jatavion Sanders had 8 receptions for 105 yards and 1 touchdown. And Xavier Worthy had 6 receptions for 86 yards. Texas has been a good contending football team all year, so this game was not surprising at all. But now, can we just talk about Georgia and Alabama? Not only do I dislike Alabama, but I despise Georgia. And Georgia fans, even worse. To hear them talk makes my skin crawl and my blood boil. I will say this phrase one time and one time only. Roll Tide. I expected Alabama to stomp all over the Dogs, and they came for business. The Tide beat Georgia 27-24, and it brings joy to my soul. Carson Beck was efficient from the pocket, completing 21 of his 29 passes for 250 yards, but he had no touchdowns. Georgia had a hard time rushing with 78 yards on the ground as a team. Give some credit to the Tide's defense. Brock Bowers was the leading receiver with 5 receptions for 53 yards. He tried his best, but the Dogs could not prevail. Now let's move on to Alabama. Jalen Milroe is him. He completed 13 of his 23 passing attempts for 192 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rodell Williams had 16 carries for 64 yards and 1 touchdown. The leading receiver for the Tide was Isaiah Bond, who had 5 receptions for 79 yards. Alabama held on, and they got the win. I will briefly run through this game, but Michigan beat Iowa, of course, 29-0. Everyone saw that one coming. But the last game of the weekend was FSU and Louisville. This game stunk up the field. As a number 4 team in the nation, they should have scored way more than 16 points. However, both defenses for each team were outstanding. Not to mention FSU was down to his third string QB. FSU beat the Cardinals 16-6. Jack Plummer, maybe the worst QB I have ever seen. He threw for 14 for 36 for 111 yards and 1 interception. Jawar Jordan had 14 carries for 52 yards on the night. Jamari Thrash had 7 receptions for 57 yards on the night as well. They did not show up for this game, which cost them a win. Moving on to the Seminoles. Third string quarterback Brock Glenn completed 8 passes of his 21 attempts. Lawrence Toafili had 10 carries for 118 yards and 1 touchdown. You'd think Johnny Wilson would dominate this game, but he had 2 receptions for 21 yards. Now, the college football rankings are out. The first team is Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. They are undefeated this year, with their most impressive wins being Ohio State and maybe Penn State. Considering their strength of schedule is not the best, let's see how J.J. McCarthy does in these playoffs. Next is the Washington Huskies. Michael Penix Jr. has been deadly all year, with his main star being, once again, Rome Odunze. This team is also undefeated, with its most impressive wins being against his top competitor, the Oregon Ducks. The Huskies beat them twice, which shows it was not a fluke. The Huskies are no strangers to the playoffs. So let's see how this year pans out. But next is Texas. You may be wondering, how in the world did they get in? I say the exact same thing. The playoff committee must see something that I don't. Yes, they beat Alabama, but they also lost to an Oklahoma team, which is pretty mediocre. If anything, FSU deserves a spot, but I don't have the credentials to make this decision. But last but not least, this is no surprise to me, but Alabama snuck into the number 4 spot. What in tarnation? To jump from number 8 to 4 is wild, especially jumping over FSU and an Ohio State team. Even though they beat Georgia, there's no way they should have got in. But that's my personal opinion. These are going to be some good games, so y'all get ready. That's a wrap for this week's college football news. To stay up to date, make sure to check out my show every week to stay tuned into your favorite sports teams. I'm Keanu Smith, and this is Clutch Sports.